Politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners.
I am the Rambling Madman.
I have this feeling, man, because there's a handful of people actually run everything. That's true. It's provable. It's not a I'm not a conspiracy nut.
Motherfuckers are so sensitive, the whole country is turned into bitch-ass niggas.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Ramblings of a Madman. This is your host, Mark Ciccarella, a.k.a. the Rambling Madman. I'm coming at you live today with episode 10. This is our 10th episode. We've made it to number 10. I guess that's a pretty big milestone, I guess maybe they say the first 10 episodes are the hardest, and then from there on out it gets easier. But I've honestly been having such a good time with you guys. It's challenging making a podcast, but it's challenging and it's rewarding. And when you finally put together the final episode, you feel rewarded. You feel good about yourself, and especially in my case, I feel like I'm doing this podcast to help people, and it feels good to get this information out there and to continue the freedom of thought and the freedom of idea movement. So yeah, I'm having a great time doing this podcast, and I want to thank you guys who have been with me from the beginning and all the new listeners I picked up. I want to give a big thanks to all the guests that I've had on the show thus far. It's not that impressive. I've only had 3 guests, but yeah, big shout out to the Odd Man Out and his show, The Oddcast, and a big shout out to Prepper Nurse 1 and his YouTube channel. They didn't have to come out onto the show, and they did, and they helped me out tremendously. The Odd Man Out has been very helpful to me through DMs and messaging and emailing, and offered his support and his help and his resources, and put me in contact with some other woke podcasters out there. And the one thing I gotta say, so far, this community that I'm now a part of, the woke podcasting community, or the conspiracy theorist community, the conspiracy theorist content creators community, is honestly the nicest community that I've ever had the pleasure of partaking in. Everybody in here has been so kind, especially the bigger guys who have been so kind as to answer my DMs and on Instagram and Twitter, and take time out of their busy schedules to respond to my DMs and agree to come on my show and help me and guide me. That's fucking awesome, and it's kind of ironic given that we're conspiracy theorists and we're supposed to be evil and we're supposed to be hurting the world and hurting everybody, yet we're the only motherfuckers that are willing to help everyone. It's kind of ironic. I love that I'm a part of this community now. I love that I get to really enjoy both parts of it, the podcasting part, the content creator part, and the listener part. And because there's so many great podcasts out there. You have the Tinfoil Hat podcast, you have the Oddcast with the Odd Man Out, who was on the show. You have Macroaggressions with Charlie Robinson. There's just so many different conspiracy related or open-minded podcasts out there, and it's so great that we have this community of people who are willing to talk and continue to talk and help each other. So yeah, that's where we're at today. The reminder: this is episode 10. I'm going to be taking a break. I'm not going to post an episode next week, I might take a week or 2 off. I'm definitely taking 1 week off. I might take 2 weeks off, just so I can get my head together, plan out the next few episodes in advance, and become more organized, and hopefully create better content for you guys. I have some pretty big guests lined up for, I guess, what you would call season 2 of Ramblings of a Madman, and I'm excited to get these guests on, and it's going to be a very nice ride. It's going to be a nice journey, great journey, podcaster's journey, and I'm very excited to continue on and go forth with these episodes. I don't know if I'm going to be taking breaks like every 10 episodes or if I'm just going to play it by ear. But right now, I think episode 10 seems to be a good spot to take a break at and collect my thoughts and organize things. So I want to thank everybody who's been donating through the Patreon. I have another new Patreon supporter from out in the UK. Shout out to my guy Moonshine. Yeah, so everybody who's been supporting me and helping out and with the cost of the show, and it's great. You guys are awesome. I want to remind everybody, if you are listening to the show, try to do it on my site. I don't like to rely on the big tech sites or apps anymore, seeing as how YouTube is very censorship friendly, and Spotify isn't too bad with the censorship as far as I know, as far as I've experienced, but I'm sure some other people might have some different stories. But I like to be able to be in control of my content, and that's why I push my listeners to go to my site, because the only person who can remove content from my site is me. So if you can, listen to it on my site. If not, no big deal. Again, there's a Patreon account. If you go to my website, in the upper right hand corner of the website, there is a link that says support me. Click the link. It'll take you to a page that has a link to the Patreon. Same thing on mobile. And the Patreon link can also be found in the episode description of every episode. Exciting news. The Ramblings of a Madman podcast is now on iHeartRadio as well. So now we're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We are on iHeartRadio. We are on YouTube. And we are on my site. So we're getting ourselves out there. And we're expanding our horizons. Today, Governor Abbott of Texas, announced that he was ending all the COVID restrictions in Texas. He issued an executive order that basically overruled all the previous executive orders he had given or issued because of COVID. And there is no more mask mandates. All businesses are allowed to open at 100% capacity. Every single business, all entities are allowed to open at 100% capacity. And I think that's awesome. I really think it's awesome. Shout out to Governor Abbott of Texas for opening back up, having the balls to do something. It kind of makes me jealous. I'm really jealous that I live in Pennsylvania and in Philadelphia in general. Everything's fucking crazy out here, as they would say. I wish I wasn't. I have a friend in Mississippi. He says that I'm a city slicker, and he's from rural bumblefuck Mississippi. Yeah, I wish I wasn't a quote-unquote city slicker. I'm not from the actual city, but I wish I wasn't from such an urbanized area. I wish I could be from an area where people were more free. But, so let's not focus too much on the negative. I have a pretty good episode coming up for you. I have a guest on. The guest's name is The Speaker. What The Speaker and I are going to be talking about is something called the Mandela Effect. For those of you who don't know what the Mandela Effect is, it is a very, very strange and odd and freaky phenomena. And it's kind of hard to explain over podcast, but I'm going to do my best to explain it. I know the speaker is going to give a tremendous breakdown of it and what he thinks is causing it, and how it's impacting, and he's even going to go into a little bit of the cover-ups that he thinks are going on to hide the Mandela Effect from us. But basically, what the Mandela Effect is when you remember something clear as day. You have vivid memories of it, yet it never happened, or that thing never was, and I know that sounds silly, and it sounds weird, and it sounds kind of like, Mark, what the fuck are you talking about? Alright, so let me give you an example. A lot of people my age and a little bit older than myself grew up watching the cartoon The Berenstain Bears, reading the books The Berenstain Bears. I know when I was in elementary school, I would come home every day and watch the Berenstain Bears cartoon. And my personal experiences with the Berenstain Bears go a step further, because when I was in elementary school, the authors of the books, Stan and Jan Berenstain, they came to my elementary school when I was in maybe first or second grade. We had a big assembly, and I ended up winning a copy of, at the time, their latest book, their latest Berenstain Bears book. And it was signed by Stan and Jan Berenstain. And now I want everybody to take out their phones and go to Google and search for the Berenstain Bears and tell me what comes up. Because when you Google Berenstain Bears, it will come back as Berenstain Bears. Slight difference, I know. Mark, why are you making such a big deal? But because it was such a big part of my childhood. I know for a fact that the Berenstain Bears were Berenstain Bears. Just that. STEIN I-N. Now they're called the Berenstain Bears, S-T-A-I-N. And it's not like, oh, yeah, shit changes. There was probably some stupid reason why they changed it. No, it didn't change. In fact, for some reason, somehow, it's always been Berenstain. There is no evidence of it ever having been Berenstain, despite the fact that myself and thousands and thousands and thousands of other people clear as day, remember the Berenstain Bears. Some other examples, some quick examples. Everybody's seen Star Wars. What's that famous line by Darth Vader? Luke, I am your father. Right? That's what it is. Luke, I am your father. No, it's not. That's not what it says. Apparently, Darth Vader says the words, "No, I am your father." Not Luke, I am your father. No, I am your father. Here, listen to it for yourself.
Dark side. Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. He told me enough. He told me you killed him. No. I am your father.
So yeah, there it is. No, I am your father. Damn Obi-Wan. Not telling Luke who his real dad is. And I guess I should mention, the original Mandela Effect, where the Mandela Effect got its name from. So there's a bunch of people, older than myself, of course, who remember back in the 90s, the late 80s, they remember that, clear as day, they remember seeing the funeral procession on TV in the late 80s, that the funeral procession of Nelson Mandela. They remember that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the late 1980s. Now, obviously, I don't have this memory because I'm not old enough to have it. That being said, Nelson Mandela died in 2013. But there are people who claim that they have such clear memories of seeing this funeral procession and all over the news of Nelson Mandela dying in the late 1980s. And I know that's like, oh, Mark, people are just having, they're remembering the wrong thing. Yeah, and maybe, but there's just so many instances of the Mandela Effect. It starts to get a little bit more creepy and creepier and creepier. And I guess another one I want to mention before we get into the episode is everybody's seen Forrest Gump, the lovable idiot, and the lovable idiot who finds himself in every major event throughout history. Well, there's a famous quote in Forrest Gump, and the quote is, "Life is like a box of chocolates." Mama always said life is like a box of chocolates. Or at least that's what we thought it was.
Hello. My name's Forrest Gump. Do you want a chocolate? I could eat about 1.5 million of these. My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates.
Apparently, it has never been life is like a box of chocolates. His mama told him life was like a box of chocolates, not is like a box of chocolates. That one doesn't even really make sense, because why would Forrest's mother tell him that life was like a box of chocolates? But I digress. I don't want to spend a crazy amount of time talking about all the different cases of the Mandela Effect here, because I want to get into the conversation with the speaker. And a little bit on the speaker's background. He is a former journalist who is now a researcher. In 2009, he had a near-death experience that turned his perception of reality upside down, and since then, he has dedicated his life to finding evidence which supports the things that he learned during his near-death experience. And he feels that the Mandela Effect is a major clue as to what's really going on in our world. And I think he's going to be a tremendous guest. I think he has some very interesting things to say in terms of what the Mandela Effect is. Not only what it is, but how it's affecting reality and what reality actually is. And also the sinister workings behind the Mandela Effect as a whole. So without further ado, I'm going to go right into the conversation with the speaker, and we're going to have a fantastic conversation. Keep on keeping on, keep on rambling, ramble on, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, so thanks for coming on the show. This is the speaker, everybody, and he's going to talk all about the Mandela Effect, and he seems to be pretty passionate about it. So I'm interested I'm interested in seeing what he has to say about it. So, if you don't mind, why don't you give us a little background about who you are, and what kind of drove you to the Mandela Effect?
Okay. Well, who I am is I'm just a regular guy that stumbled down a rabbit hole a few years ago. Back in the 90s, I was increasingly interested in the alien phenomenon because I had a couple personal experiences and my parents had some experiences. And so I kind of went down that road for a while and then got away from that when I was in college, and then became an adult and had the responsibilities of life and had children and everything. And then about 2009, I got sick and ended up experiencing a high fever. And I won't go into all the details, but ended up having what would be traditionally called a near-death experience or a out-of-body experience. And I left my body, went into a different plane of existence, and was there for quite some time. And I'm not going to go in, I don't want to hijack the show with that story because that's not what we're talking about today. But what it did was showed me some things that kind of turned my world upside down. So after that situation and those experiences, I decided that I really needed to go out and I wanted to make sure that what I experienced was real. Because in my experience, I was told that I would later on have to talk about it. And I thought, well, I'm not going to talk about it unless I know exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So at that time, I was in the world of finance. I was a businessman. I lived with a BlackBerry and a Bluetooth in my ear. I was that guy that was always talking and screaming in the phone and briefcase and the whole 9 yards. And this just completely changed me. So I just started researching everything I could on the possibility that we are in a very sophisticated holographic simulation, because that's basically the message that I got. And what happened was I had stumbled into the Mandela Effect because when you're, as you know, you'll start down one road and you'll fall into another rabbit hole. Yes. And you go, oh my gosh, now I have to look at this, So you'll just go a bunch of dead ends and have to come back and where you left off and continue to research. But so I got sidetracked for a while by the Mandela Effect because I found it fascinating. However, at the time, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Not to cut you off, but that's always one of the things I loved about being a conspiracy theorist, or whatever you want to call people who like to seek the truth and stuff, is that you find all these different conspiracies and you start researching one, then it leads you to another and another and another, and then you're like, oh my god, this is overwhelming, and then you start to realize all these pieces to the puzzle are all connected here, and
right.
You might be getting led astray in different ways, but you're always going to end up on the same path, which I've always found was really cool.
Right, and it does eventually all come back together. If you can really get to the point where you can step back and see the big picture, it relieves so much of that stress, because as soon as you find something new that you haven't experienced before in your research, you can immediately identify it and say, oh, well, that now connects right here. You start getting faster at putting the pieces together. So the more you stick with this, the more you keep questioning, using your critical thinking, which is trying to be squashed right now. And that's very important, and that's part of a plan.
Exactly.
But we have to keep doing that, because journalism today is no longer going to be helping us with this. They've checked out. They're now the fourth branch of our government, and that's the way it is. They regurgitate what they're told to regurgitate, and it is what it is. They're not there to do any independent research or digging or doing anything dangerous. So
no, of course not. I was actually a journalism major back when I graduated high school. I went to university for a little while as a journalism major, and one of the first things, like, they kind of hint at, they don't come straight out and tell you, but they kind of hint at it's not necessarily about telling the truth. Because when I'm not gonna lie, I was on the Trump train back in 2018, and I thought, oh my God, I wanted to save the world and fake news this and fake news that, and I wanted to be, I wanted to restore honesty and integrity to journalism, so I was a little misguided, but I had good intentions, and then I went into journalism school, and they basically hint at the idea that it's not about telling the truth. It's not about getting the biggest and the best story that you can possibly do that for the betterment of society or humanity. It's about making money for your organization. It's about making money for the person who employs you. And I guess from a business aspect, I can't argue with it, but it really just crushed my drive and motivation to be a journalist. I'm thankful that I found that drive and that spark again now through my podcast. I feel like me having this podcast is kind of what I wanted to do in the beginning. I wanted to do much bigger things and be like an investigative journalist and do big stories around the world, but I'll settle for this. But yeah, there is no honesty and integrity in journalism anymore, and anybody who thinks there is sadly mistaken.
No, there's not. I remember, I went through the school of journalism, graduated, and I was working as a writer for a local news channel, and the producer came to me and he said, "Mike, you really got to dumb these stories down." And I'm quoting directly, and I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're writing up here," and he held his hand up, and he's like, "We try to write as if the audience is at a third grade education level. That's what pretty much the standard is in the industry." And I said, "At the third grade level?" And he says, "Yes, because the way we see it statistically, and our studies show that's about the average education or level that they can handle of information is about the third grade level. And then it starts getting convoluted and they start getting confused." This is what is in the mindset of news producers out there. This is how they see us, And
it makes you wonder, is that what they were told? Is that what they believe? And is that really what they think? Is that what science says? Is that, we can only or the average person can only handle a certain level of information, or is it that that's all they want you to know?
I think it's what they see, and then that affects their belief. Because when you look at, live PD, that show Live PD, or you look at the news, look at the people that they're exchanging with every single day. The majority of people that make the news, there's a reason they're making the news. They're not making good decisions because there's no good news. They don't want to produce good news because that's counterproductive to what they believe your stimulus. You don't respond to good news. You don't buy or consume to good news. For some reason, they believe that too. I disagree. So when they go out there, they're interviewing people that give them the image that they believe is the American average citizen, because that's who they're encountering, and it's unfortunate that that's the way the system is structured, but it is. So I was just talking about this today. Podcasting is going to be the Alamo for free speech. We're all, it's going to be the last place, the last bastion of free speech, and then eventually, I believe the way that the trend is going, that they'll start somehow cracking down on that.
I think they've already started it, and I was actually listening to another podcast with a guy that I'm going to be recording with in the future. His podcast is called conspiracy or just a coincidence. And he mentioned in one of his more recent episodes that a lot of these, quote unquote woke podcasts, it seems like, they're fake woke. They kind of seem like infiltrated, and I for me personally, the first thing I thought of was Joe Rogan. And because everybody is all over Joe Rogan, everybody loves Joe Rogan. I just never understood it, because to me, I think Joe Rogan, he's very interesting person, but from what I've seen of Joe Rogan, it just doesn't seem real to me. It seems like he doesn't have the passion that a lot of other people in this community have, and he's more about his image or making money off of the show, and you can't knock a guy for trying to make money. But I also feel like in a way, like, he gives you all this like surface level information, and but I don't think he doesn't, like, there's no like journalistic approach to it,
No.
like there's no like trying to get to the bottom of this, and a lot of it's like he'll warn you about shit like technology, and then he'll go on to talk about how he's being involved in all this technology. It's like, and that's what I feel like a lot of. I feel like it's been infiltrated already. It's podcasting. It's not brand new, and it's been around for a while now, and I think, like, I don't know. I think maybe they kind of saw this boom coming, and got ahead of the curve and tried to infiltrate it and control, what this show is, and the market for this show, and convolute it.
Yeah, I think Rogan plays his part for information, and there are guests on there that I do tune in because I'm curious what they're going to say. Are they going to, confirm or give disinformation? What I always like to see someone that is involved in the quote unquote conspiracy theory genre, and then get on there and see if they're really trying to steer people in a different direction or not. And I think Rogan doesn't ask the tough enough questions
Exactly.
to get that out of his guest. I would like to see him really dig in. And I think he used to back when he was smaller, and that's where he really, got popular. But now
just like Alex Jones.
Yeah. So getting back to the Mandela Effect and how this all ties in, I was so I had my experience, and I was doing research on the possible simulation theories that would confirm what I would already had in my brain. And the Mandela Effect fascinated me because I thought, well, this is an interesting glitch, if it is a phenomenon. But at the time, I remember distinctly thinking to myself, well, it's got to be their imagination. Because at the time, I wasn't experiencing a Mandela Effect. And until you experience one, and you have that conviction inside of you that says, no, there is something wrong here. I do not remember it this way at all. You can't really understand the effect. You could look at it and you could say, oh, it's interesting, and but you'll still have that doubt until you experience it. And I finally experienced it when I moved here. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was got a job and was working, and they mentioned that the traffic was going to be bad because Billy Graham died. And I said, oh, his son died? And I said, no, his son didn't die. Billy Graham died. And I said, Billy Graham has been dead for 10 years. I remember he died a decade ago. I can't remember the exact date, but I was, absolutely convinced that Billy Graham was dead. And they're like, no, he just died 2 days ago. And I was just, that bothered me all day. And I said, am I experiencing the Mandela Effect? So that prompted me to go dive back into that hole. And when I dived back in, there was all these new Mandela effects that all seemed to affect me. I mean, prior to 2017, I wasn't even affected by it. And then all of a sudden, I was just stunned. I was like, there's no way. How did all this change? And so it got me thinking, and I said to myself, okay, if this is real, then there's possibilities to what this indicates. And for me personally, I think it indicates that if we're in a simulation, then a simulation can be affected just like a computer program with a virus. It can be affected by a hacker. It can be affected by somebody doing something within the program, and that sends a ripple effect to the program, and then you get glitches like that. But after doing a lot of years of checking and researching and looking into who's involved with certain things and aspects about this, I really think we're in the middle of a time war, is the only way I could describe it. I think there's parties on this planet that are trying to manipulate the space-time continuum, and they're trying to manipulate it in each other's favors, whatever that would be. They want this outcome, so they're pushing us or skipping us. Like, if you look at a CD and the way the CD works, the laser shines down on the reflective surface, and the reflective surface has a pattern in it. And if you bump the laser, it'll jump to the next line, And your ear might not notice it, but you will notice it. Your brain will be like, oh, that skipped. And that's how the Mandela Effect seems to be. It seems to be a skip in the space-time, as if we got bumped into another timeline. So I became very fascinated with that reason, because I thought if this can be shown as a real phenomenon, and it's growing every day, it might help me with my theory of the simulation theory and how it works, because I do have a model that I've kind of built up, and we can always do another podcast where we go over that model of how the simulation works and what its purpose is. But we're here for the Mandela Effect today, because we want to start with baby steps, and then we'll get to the big heavy stuff.
Yeah, we don't want to confuse the audience too much here.
Right.
I mean, the Mandela Effect alone is hard enough to explain verbally to somebody without just like showing them what you mean. And so yeah, we don't want to confuse the audience. I found myself making the intro to this episode, and I'm like, how the hell do I tell people that the Berenstein Bears used to be the Berenstein Bears and not the Berenstain Bears? And like when you sit there and think about trying to convince somebody that something that doesn't exist at all existed, it's like you're fighting an uphill battle there.
Yeah. Well, and another example is just last year, Wilford Brimley died. And
I'm not familiar with that one.
He's an actor.
Okay.
Been around for years. And there is a large community, sorry, I keep hitting my mic. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
There's a large community out there that felt that he died years ago, after the movie that he made with Tom Cruise called The Firm, which I remember it that way too. As a matter of fact, I can remember in my own personal memory going to work and people saying, oh, Wilford Brimley died. And I said, do you think it was the diabetes? And it's a joke because he had a diabetes commercial back then, and the way he said diabetes was the meme of that time, So okay. I can remember saying that. And then nobody said anything. I said, oh, too soon, okay. And then he dies. And I'm going, and when he passed away, they showed his most recent picture, and the man was, obviously very old when he died. I had never seen him look like that ever. So if he would have died.
Oh, I just looked him up. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, yeah, I do remember him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about now. I haven't put the two and two together, but that it's a Mandela Effect. But yeah, that when you said the diabetes commercial, he said like diabetes.
Diabetes, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So that was another one that I experienced, and once I experienced those two, I just dove in and I had to search and see what other ones personally affected me, and but what we should probably do for your audience is explain how this started, I guess, the Mandela Effect, when it started, if you want to do that.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and break down this crazy topic, dive right in.
Okay, so what happened is there's a writer named Fiona Broome who, back in 2009, she was she was at a conference and was talking to some individuals, and she discovered that Nelson Mandela was still alive. It was just a random conversation. And she said to herself, well, that doesn't ring true with me. I remember him dying years ago, and I remember the funeral on television and Mrs. Mandela speaking, and it turned out just in the conference crowd that she was discussing this with, there were people that said, oh, I remember that too. The same thing that you remember. And she's like, well, this is fascinating. So she started going into discussion groups and asking about if people, and she started getting overwhelmed with answers. And then it began to grow into this whole phenomenon where people were saying, I noticed this has changed, and I've noticed this has changed. And she started collecting all of these testimonies, and she built a website. Well, the website became so popular, it actually crashed several times. And then she eventually just said, I'm not doing this anymore. It's, I'm done. It's consumed my life. I'm a writer. I have other, another life. But she was the one that termed the Mandela Effect. And basically what it is the phenomenon of someone remembering something happening different than what it actually happened. And the interesting thing about this effect is, especially with the internet today, it's very easy to have false memories. We all have false memories. But if you cannot duplicate that false memory across a large population demographic source.
Exactly.
How can I have the same false memory as you? No, I could have a false memory that Mandela died of cancer or something, but you may have another one that says Nelson Mandela died in prison, or these are consistently across the board of people remembering things happening a certain way on a large scale. So that tells me that there's something else going on there too.
Of course.
Yeah.
And another thing, is the vividness of the memories.
Yeah.
Like you said about the funeral procession, that's the big one. So many people remember exact specific details about that Mandela funeral procession on TV, and then not only the specific details, but then there's the personal experiences with all these memories that people have. It's just crazy. Especially for me, in my case, the Berenstain Bears one. And I don't mean to keep talking about the Berenstain Bears, but that's the one that really made me go what the fuck? Because I came home every day from elementary school, watched the Berenstain Bears cartoon, and I had a bunch of the books. I would read the books. I watched the cartoon every day. I remember vividly it was Berenstain.
Mm-hmm.
The authors of the books, Stan and Jan Berenstain, came to my elementary school for an assembly, and they gave away a signed copy of the book. I got that signed copy.
Wow.
I won that signed copy. I don't know. I forget how I won it, but I remember vividly that I won it, and I had gotten it, and I was so excited because it was signed. But it's I just have these vivid memories that part of them aren't true anymore, and it freaks me out because I know they're true. And then when I first learned about it, I went and looked at all these old books of the Berenstain Bears, and seeing it with my eyes really freaked me out.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing that it said STAIN,
mm-hmm.
and that there was no book out there that says STEIN. That was just blew my mind. It freaked me out. I got the chills, and it was just what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah. And what's perfect about that is an object that, because it was a personal thing that you won and it was personally signed by the authors, you would have looked at it over and over and over again. It would have been emblazed in your memory. And I had the same example for me. When I was in the world of finance, I traveled a lot. And I would get on a jet and I would sit in the window. And most of the time I was on the wing or just slightly off the wing, and I could see the engine. And there were many times that I would travel to places where you would have to walk across the tarmac and then go up the ramp because it was in South America or a small Caribbean, island type airport. So they didn't have the tarmac, And when you're walking towards a plane, you're kind of looking it over. And I can remember where the position of the jet engines underneath the wings. And what happened was I started looking at jets recently, passenger jets, and I made the comment, I'm like, man, no wonder the airline industry is suffering. They had to remodel all of these planes across, all of these fleets. And my friend was like, what are you talking about? And I said, the jets, they're now forward of the wing, very much forward, almost to the point where the back end of the jet.
They're not underneath the wings anymore?
No.
I mean, I've never been on a plane personally, but from everything I've ever seen, I remember the jets being underneath the wings.
Look at
or
them
the
now.
Engines.
And the guy said to me, that's the way they've always been. And I said, no, they haven't. No, they haven't. And we got in an argument. So I went on the internet, and because when you go on the internet, you can go back and look at the original Air Force One, and the jet's engines are now pushed forward. I mean, they're not even under the wing. They're almost. Are you looking at them?
What the heck? It doesn't even look natural.
It doesn't.
It doesn't look right.
As a matter of fact, here's what's really interesting about this Mandela Effect. There was a guy that was convinced that the way the jets were now were not capable, would cause too much turbulence and would actually cause the planes to lose altitude. And he was an aerodynamic engineer of some kind, and he wrote a blog or something online. I remember reading it. And after he wrote this article, there was a foil, like an attachment added to the jets, and I don't have any images up, that appeared out of nowhere and then historically was in effect. So that's the thing that's so crazy about this phenomenon, is not only does it change in real time, but it goes back throughout the history and changes it. So there's this consistency. And that suggests to me that this is a program. It's something that could be rewritten or changed, and somebody's doing it. Now, who's doing it is the question, because there's so many candidates. I have my theories, but I just have theories. That's all I have, and speculation. I can only look at the big picture and say this would make logical sense if X, Y, Z was involved in this. But and it could be just a simple fact that there's something wrong with our space-time continuum, and this is the after effect of something else going on that we can't see yet. Now, I do want to mention one thing, though, on a side note, and these are just interesting coincidences. Almost at the same time that this woman, Fiona, I forgot her last name, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I forget her name.
Fiona Broom. Fiona
Yes,
Broom.
Broom.
At the same time she started noticing these effects, there was a couple interesting coincidences. And for instance, right after she started noticing the effects, right before that happened, there was an accident at CERN. And it caused the collider to be shut down for 18 months. And matter of fact, they didn't even issue a report on it for a year. And then the report that they issued was a very, how do I put this? What they say happens doesn't add up to how long they were shut down and how long it took to issue this report. Does that make sense?
And it makes perfect sense. And what you're talking about the Large Hadron Collider,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just for the people who might not know, do you want to explain kind of, sort of, in layman's terms, what that is?
Sure. It's what they're doing is they have this huge donut, miles long. I think it's miles long. I haven't checked on the.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is miles long.
I haven't checked on the actual dimensions. And what they do is they fire particles from a point, but they fire them in opposite directions. Those go through a vacuum, and they speed the particles up to the speed of light, and then they collide them. And what they're trying to do is recreate the Big Bang.
Exactly.
And then get the measurements of the Big Bang. That's what their official role is.
And CERN, for you guys who don't know what CERN is a organization in Europe. It stands for European Council for Nuclear Research. And if you say it in, I think it's Swiss, I'm pretty sure that it's, no, it's French, I'm sorry. If you say it in French, it ends up being the acronym CERN. CERN is, they do nuclear research there, and there's a bunch of high-paid scientists that work there. Mm-hmm. And they're doing some they're trying to play God, basically, is what they're doing. And like you said, recreating the Big Bang. And interesting fact, they have a statue of the Hindu goddess Shiva, the destroyer of worlds, in front of their facilities.
Have you seen the secret footage that was taken of the ritual that they did around that statue?
You know, I haven't. I've heard of the footage, but back when I had heard of it, I was trying to find the video, and I couldn't find the actual video.
It's pretty disturbing, because they actually...
I don't doubt it.
They sacrifice a woman in front of it, and the person that's...
like an actual woman, a live woman.
Yeah. And the person that is filming it from a window up about maybe the third floor, they just go, oh shit, and they drop the camera and they run as soon as they see that person. Because at first they're filming it like, what are these people doing? They're wearing these robes, they're in a circle, and then this woman lays down, and this person pulls out this dagger and plunges it right into her chest. And then the person's like, oh shit,
Jesus.
you know. And a lot of people are like, it's fake. But okay, let's say it's fake.
Even if it is.
Let's say there's no doubt in the video that they were at the CERN facilities. It's you can't recreate that set, you know. And there's no doubt the person is filming it from a window, because you can see the reflection of the lights on the window. So let's say the CERN people were, maybe they got drunk and just decided to put on robes and you know,
do a mock execution.
It doesn't make sense. You see what I'm saying?
It's like the same exact shit with Bohemian Grove. You know what Bohemian Grove is, right?
Yeah.
And like how they do the mock, like Alex Jones, back when he was the real deal, he infiltrated Bohemian Grove and had that footage of them doing the mock execution sacrifice shit. And like, quote, they say it's a mock execution, but like, even if it's not real, even if it's fake, why the hell are people in power doing shit like this?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I've never gone to a business conference and had a mock sacrifice, you know, performed in front of me. You don't plan that without having a purpose, you know. So getting back to some coincidences. So right after the Mandela Effect started appearing on the world scene, and people started remembering things different, was right after this collider accident. And, you know, my theory is possibly something happened, you know, with this at that time. Maybe it was an accident, maybe it worked. And they just wanted to analyze the data and say, okay, now how can we use this to change the future? On the same day that the CERN had this accident, the same exact day in London, there was a dedication ceremony for a very weird clock. And it's called the Corpus Christi clock. It's in Cambridge, in London. And the ceremony was dedicated by, he died recently, the physicist in the wheelchair, Hawkins.
Yeah, yes, Stephen Hawking. Sorry.
Stephen Hawkins. If you get a chance, take a look at that thing. The occultism is just blatant in it, and it's a very unique clock. And Time Magazine called it the greatest invention of the year for that year. What its purpose is, no one seems to know. They call it a sculpture.
Is that a dragon grasshopper combination on top of it?
Yeah.
It's fucking weird looking.
It is very creepy.
It looks like if you at first glance, it looks like the solar system.
Mm-hmm. And at night, it lights up. It's got an LED weird display. It's just a really creepy thing, and that's just an interesting coincidence that I just want people to go out there and take a look at that. And you just have all these synchronicities going on, and at the same time that the Collider had its accident, the next day, the $900 billion bailout was passed by Congress. And at that time, I was knee deep in the financial world.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you right now, I was ready to pack up and just go somewhere, away from society, because we were on the brink. A lot of people still do not realize how close we were to just total chaos. And then the day that bill passed, I couldn't believe it. And I didn't understand to this day how that stimulus saved us. But it did. It did. It didn't save us, we have never recovered from that still to this day.
No.
But it did stop the chaos. So I always found that interesting too, and quite an interesting coincidence that all of these things coincided at the exact same time that the Collider has this.
Actually, I think you cut out there for about 5 seconds.
Okay.
You said it did save us from the chaos, and then it cut out.
It saved us from the chaos that would have come just another day. I mean, it wouldn't have started on the next day, but over the next 3 or 4 weeks, you would have seen just a total collapse of the U.S. economy and the world economy after that. And I think something was done to stop that from happening, both on a metaphysical scale, spiritual scale, and then within the elite groups, whatever that is. But it's just a theory I have, and all I'm looking at is all the pieces up on the board, and saying, well, that's a lot of coincidence for one day,
Yeah, exactly.
So, do you have a favorite Mandela Effect, or other than
the Berenstain Bears one is? I know it's kind of a cop-out answer to say this is my favorite one, but the only reason it's my favorite one is because it introduced me to all this, and so I found out about the Mandela Effect through YouTube. Actually, I was watching a video. I was watching. So I don't know what video it was that I was watching, but then in the suggested videos, it said it was a video. It was 10 craziest examples of the Mandela Effect, and I clicked. I'm like, what is the Mandela Effect? I saw it had a picture of the Berenstain Bears as the the picture, and so I clicked on it, and it talked about the Berenstain Bears one, the Star Wars Luke, I am your father.
Mm-hmm.
It talked about they talked about Forrest Gump with life is like a box of chocolates, but it actually said life was like a box of chocolates.
Yeah.
And so I had this video, and it showed me all the textbook Mandela Effect examples, and the Berenstain Bears one blew me away.
Yeah.
Because I had such personal connections to it, and then I remember from there it just spiraled. I kept getting this wasn't that long ago. It was maybe 4-ish years. I was in high school at the time, so maybe 2017, 2016. It was it was, and YouTube was like, even just 5 years ago, YouTube was way different for these types of things. Like, 10 years ago, you could find a lot of, interesting content about conspiracy theories and stuff. And now it just seems like as the years go on and time keeps progressing further and further, shit just keeps getting wiped from the internet. So I'm not sure if people who are listening, they'd be able to go on YouTube right now and find all these videos that I'm talking about. I'd imagine not. I'd imagine it's going to be pretty hard. If you do search, try to search through DuckDuckGo and type in like Mandela Effect videos YouTube on DuckDuckGo, because that seems to be how like I come across a lot of the stuff that I used to be able to find in the past. Is even if you search on YouTube, it won't pop up, but DuckDuckGo usually is good with finding that stuff.
Well, when you contacted me regarding doing this episode for your podcast, I haven't looked at the Mandela Effect for a while, maybe for a year, right? And just a year ago, when I last looked at it to just get an update on what was going on, there was, still good information when you Googled it. Pertinent information, Wikipedia, that sort of thing. Now I Googled it again, and what I get is, first off, I'm on Google. I'm not including DuckDuckGo on this. DuckDuckGo, has a better algorithm. It's more free. But
yeah,
on Google, what you will see now when you type in the Mandela Effect is articles on mental health websites. So what that's telling me is that people are talking about this effect to their therapists, and they're saying, I'm remembering things differently, and what does this mean? And because they would not be putting it out there unless this was a discussion that they're seeing across the mental health spectrum, across the field.
Of course.
In addition to that, you have these mental health sites, and every single one of them, when you first pull it up, the first paragraph you'll see is, you'll type in Mandela Effect. The article will even be called, What is the Mandela Effect? But it'll say, what is false memories? And then it'll explain to you what you're actually experiencing. You're experiencing a false memory. Calm down, This is very common. It's what the brain does. Now, why is there a campaign, and why does Google have the algorithm set up for those to be the first things you see?
I know exactly what you're talking about, and
if it's not a real phenomenon, is what I'm saying.
Exactly,
yeah.
And it's very similar to when I was doing research for my Pizzagate episode that I did. If you Google search Pizzagate, just the word Pizzagate, the first things that come up are why is there. It'll be like articles. Why Pizzagate is a dangerous conspiracy theory. Why?
Yes.
How conspiracy theorists changed the way the internet is because of a crazy conspiracy theory that came to be known as Pizzagate. It's just all just like stuff to make you just think, like, you don't even have to read the article at that point, because you already know what it's going to say. Like, Pizzagate bad, the Pizzagate not real. These are crazy tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
And it's the exact same thing with the Mandela Effect and almost every other conspiracy out there that you go on Google, and like it just Google is just telling you that this is wrong.
Right.
This is wrong. These things never happen.
Yeah.
And then but it's wild to me. I'd like to know the whole process behind this. Like, are they paying people like crazy amounts of money to sift through the internet and block all this shit? Like, just is that somebody's job all day long, is to just block all this shit from being consumed by us? Like, if so, that's some serious dedication that they have going on there.
Right. Another example. I found an article on a blog that the blog is run by Northrop Grumman. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know like too much about them, but I am familiar with them.
They are a huge contractor for aerospace and defense, but they do a lot of aerospace technologies, and they have a blog that is, well, it's, you know, its subtitle is The Intersection of Technology, Innovation, and Creativity. And they have scientific articles on black holes, environmental technologies, future technologies, scientific discoveries, space, those types of things. And you could go through here, but there was an article on here called "What is the Mandela Effect?" And how does the Mandela effect relate to all of this other stuff that's on this blog? I don't know. But somebody had a meeting at Northrop Grumman. There's editors. I was a journalist. You have an editor. You have a producer. And when you say, I'd like to write an article on this, they'll be like, nah, we're not going to do that right now. Or, okay, do it, but I want to read it first. There's a lot of process involved. So somebody made a decision that they needed to write an article on the Mandela Effect. Why would Northrop Grumman, a defense contractor, be interested in the Mandela Effect? And when you look at the article, the very first thing is, the first line is, the human memory is a powerful but tricky thing. And the next paragraph is, what is false memory? So there again, you see what is false memory being just propagated out there. And I think what they're trying to do is tell everybody, hey, this isn't real. This is what you're experiencing isn't real, because I think they are involved in something that either they by accident caused this, somebody did, or somebody else is hacking the system and it's a security threat. I don't know, China
hacking the simulation,
hacking reality. Yes.
Yeah. That's fucking interesting.
Because what's interesting is China just had to make a statement recently. It was in the news, buried in the news, and because they had somehow these designs that they were working on were getting out, and these things that they were designing was stuff that messed with space and time, basically time travel type devices. And they said, no, we're not working on time travel, because somehow, I don't remember how, but the plans got leaked out. And then recently, our own government, or contractors that work for our government, defense contractors and stuff, are filing patents for things that discuss changing the space-time continuum. So, one thing that I remember in 2009, when this all went down with CERN and the accident, was, for me, I do not remember CERN being as advanced as they were in 2009. For me, my memory was, because at that time I was a reporter, an investigator and a reporter, but I was more in the science side of it. And so I was watching this CERN project with interest, and I can remember they were years away from getting anything done. They were talking 2012 and beyond before they could fire it up. And then all of a sudden, I see all these articles that they've been firing, making experiments for years. That's another Mandela effect for me. So,
yeah.
But
there's so many layers to this shit,
but if you want to, if somebody goes down this rabbit hole, we should probably put a disclosure in it. It's gonna confuse you. It's going to really.
It's going to confuse you. It's going to terrify you as well.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw a video of somebody explaining what CERN was doing, and how they were trying to mess. The first video that I saw, and the theory that was proposed, was that something went wrong with the Hadron Collider, and when the shit went down, they merged timelines together. and basically saying that the theory was that this is a multiverse, and when they did what they did, they collided multiple timelines together, causing pretty much chaos in the space-time continuum and changing things that used to be.
Right.
And there were some arguments that were made that maybe they did this on purpose. Maybe they are continuing to do this on purpose. And it really just freaked me out that, people could do this type of stuff. And yeah, I just remember I was kind of like in a daze.
Yeah.
After watching those videos, I remember I had to stop myself and I put on Netflix, and I was actually I was trying to watch 30 Rock on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't do it. I just kept thinking about fucking CERN and how evil and shit that sounded. And so beware, yes, if you fucking go down this rabbit hole, it is one of those rabbit holes that will scare you and you won't be able to look away from it, so you're going to keep digging in.
Well, and the scary part of it is that it changes the past. It not only you'll see the change, and then you go and look, and according to the world, it's always been this way, and you just say it hasn't. So, an example, one of the ones that really got me was in the '90s. There was a show on HBO called, and I'm going to say what it was called because this is what it was called. It was called Sex in the City. All right? Do you remember that show?
I mean, I'm only 21, but I know Sex in the City.
Okay.
Are you telling me it's not Sex in the City?
No. So now, and throughout history, all through the internet, it's called Sex and the City.
Oh, get the fuck out of here.
Nope.
Oh my
Now,
God.
let me tell you, I had an ex-wife at that time who was obsessed with this show. I had to watch it all the time. She had the box set, DVD box set. She had the board game of Sex in the City. We had to play this board game.
The board game.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Trust
So
me.
this is like me with the Berenstain
Yeah,
Bears, you
I
and
saw
Sex in the
this-
City.
Yeah. I saw it all the time. And for it to be called Sex and the City doesn't even make any sense.
It doesn't.
It's
like when Forrest Gump says life was like a box of chocolates. That doesn't make sense. Why would his mom tell him that life was like a box of chocolates?
right. Yeah. It's just so that was a big one for me. The other one is I'm a Star Wars fan. And
Yes.
I grew up, I'm at that age where I had the privilege of seeing them for the first time in the theater and experiencing the magic. And my father and I were huge Star Wars fans, and we went to every single one of them, and we saw them a dozen times each.
That's awesome.
He would keep me out of school just to go see it, and one thing I know for sure is that C-3PO did not have a silver leg.
Yeah, that was a big one for me too, because around the same time that I was getting into the Mandela Effect is when I was getting into Star Wars.
Right.
And then, about a year after I had gotten into the Mandela Effect, I saw this thing. It was like, C-3PO has a silver leg. I'm like, no, the fuck he doesn't. That was, I'm like, how? It doesn't make sense. Why would he have a silver leg?
And when I first saw the silver leg, it was in a toy box, a container, at a toy store. And I said, "Oh, that must be that must be the C-3PO that they're going to have in the new George Lucas series that was coming out at that time, that was being anticipated." So I thought they were putting the product out for it, and then I found out, no, that's the way he's always been. No, he had
No.
It's not even. And there's so many others what was the one that I.
For me, one of the ones was Febreze.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah, the spelling of it.
The spelling of Febreze, Febreze is F-E-B-R-E-E-Z-E. And then, you look it up and there's just one E in between the R and the Z, and it looks do you know the feeling you get when you first see something that's a Mandela effect? How unnatural it looks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just it kind of creeps you out a little bit. Another one for me was the double stuffed Oreos.
Yes.
How there's only there's only one F now in double stuffed Oreos. Like, it just doesn't look right. Like Febreze spelled like that should be like Febreze.
Right. And in marketing, they're gonna make it. Would you not make it breeze, like a breeze of fresh air?
Exactly.
To do it any other way, it does look silly, and that's the thing I love about the Mandela Effect, is that the effects are small, but they're so obvious that they're a giveaway that something is happening, and what is happening is the next question, but what for me it does for me is satisfy the need that I have, that okay, if this is a program, a very sophisticated program, something that we can only begin to imagine, but if it is, it can be manipulated. And I think someone or something, because it could be an outside entity outside of the simulation. One thing that is interesting was on Project Camelot. I don't know if you're familiar with their videos.
I'm not.
Project Camelot has been around a long time. They pretty much started a lot of the conspiracy genre back in the early days of the first decade of the 2000s.
Okay.
And you can get on there and look at all their videos. But they had an interview with a gentleman who was a soldier, Air Force, computer programmer guy. And he supposedly disclosed that he worked for a project called Project Looking Glass. And it was some sort of technology that our government had acquired from an alien technology, which allowed them to look at timelines. And according to him, they were able to look at the timelines, but that was all they could do. And what they noticed, that the timelines were all merging to a center point. At that time, it was all merging to a center point of December 21st, 2012. And he was assigned to a team to try to figure out how to stop that time merge. They didn't know what it meant, but they just didn't have a good feeling about it. I'm really paraphrasing. You have to go back, and he was interviewed several times. They figured out a way to push that convergence back. And so when they presented that to the higher ups, they said, listen, the only thing we can do is we can push that convergence to another date in the future, but the reaction of that will make the outcome far worse after the convergence. And they said, we don't care, do it. So yeah, because in the intelligence world, everything is compartmentalized. They're just going to say, we don't care, do it, and they're not going to give you an explanation. There could be many reasons why that they don't want this to happen, but that's according to this gentleman. So they pushed the convergence of these timelines, and he did not give the date, because once he was on the team that found the solution was then passed on to another team. So he didn't know past that point what date they pushed the convergence to. But if his testimony is correct and he was involved in this project, then what ripple effect did that have? And are we experiencing these ripples, and that's manifesting as the Mandela Effect? So I don't know, but it's really interesting.
It is. This is like there's just so much information in regards to the Mandela Effect. It's like, and it can be so overwhelming at some points. Like, not only is some weird shit going on. Okay, I can see you stumble across the Mandela Effect and you're like, oh my god, some weird shit's going on. Then you like take it a step further and you see the shit with CERN, and then you take it a step further than that and you see like the true diabolical shit that could be happening from what CERN is doing, and then like you just keep. It's like it's the ultimate rabbit hole, I think.
It is, but it's a good baseline to start with, because for me it is, for my research. I think it's wonderful. I get thrilled when I see the Mandela Effect, and I know that sounds sick, but it tells me that something's happening, and it's a confirmation for me, and it helps my cause, because what I want to be able to do is later on talk to people and show them the evidence that we're in a simulation, and that it's being affected and it's being manipulated. So
yeah, one of the things with the Mandela Effect that kind of like freaks me out is like when you sit and think about like what from our lives today could disappear tomorrow.
Exactly.
With the Mandela Effect. Like what if, or maybe not tomorrow, but what if 10 years from now, everybody, you go to your buddy and you're like, yo, you remember back when we spent a whole entire year wearing masks and staying inside?
Yeah.
And then he's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
You don't remember the coronavirus, COVID-19, and all the government restrictions? He's like, dude, that never happened. Mm-hmm. And it could, like, that would freak me the fuck out if like something big like that, like 10 years from now, this pandemic that we're in never happened.
Yeah. Well, there's people that have experienced this on a very personal level. If you, and once again, I don't subscribe to the reliability of Reddit. I think Reddit has been completely...
yeah, the Mandela Effect subreddit is absolutely dog shit. It's horrible.
Right. But if you get out of the Mandela Effect and you kind of search around, you'll find some testimonies in other subreddits and whatnot where people have experienced growing up with a tree in their yard and remember playing under that tree and growing up with the tree and swinging from that tree. They'll go away to college, or they'll go on leave home, and they'll come back to visit their parents. And this is one example that I found, and I found it very intriguing because she seemed so sincere, and she looked out the window and she's like, well, hey, why did you guys remove that tree? And parents were like, what are you talking about? The tree that was in front of the garage. There's never been a tree in front of that garage. And it completely freaked her out. It was, the subreddit is called Glitch in the Matrix.
Oh yeah, dude, that subreddit. I've spent hours in that subreddit before.
It's a minefield.
Yeah,
yeah. But
I actually have had something similar. I have a vivid memory of being at some sort of theme park with my parents when I was young, and it had to be really young because my parents split up when I was very, very young. So I had to be like I would say about 3 or 4 years old, and my dad, and I have this vivid fucking memory of my dad taking me on this like little tiny roller coaster thing and getting on it. I was freaking out, and I have this memory of being stuck on that ride, and it's been years since I've asked about it, but I still have this memory. And every time I've ever asked my mom about it, it's like that memory doesn't exist. That never happened. What are you talking about? And like, it's weird. It's weird when you have those little, because you know in your heart when something happened. Like you know inside of you when those memories happened. Like there's one thing for like little false memories here and there. Like you. Like, oh, I could have sworn that happened the other day. No, but no, this is like stuff like you have emotions attached to these memories. Like,
exactly.
If I can see if there's no emotions attached to the memory, why people would say that, oh, it's just a false memory. You're just a slip of the mind. But some of these emotions that are attached to these memories that people have are too real and too raw to have been non-existent at all.
Yeah, and it's a when you experience the Mandela, the first thing you'll experience is a sickening feeling of, am I crazy or
exactly
what?
Yeah,
and then you'll get convicted or you'll just say, no, this is not right. This is not right. I know what I experienced, you know. For instance, we always, we talk about these children's books and stuff, but Curious George, when my kids were growing up, I read Curious George to them. They loved Curious George, and they had the cartoons. Well, guys,
the tail.
The tail's gone.
Yeah, I know. My little brother used to watch Curious George every morning, and because he was a few years younger than me, so I remember going off to the bus stop to go to elementary school while he was still sitting at home with my mom, and like he would be watching Curious George, and I know vividly that he had a fucking tail.
Right.
And
and the thing about
apparently
it is,
he didn't.
Here's the thing: when you see that, you're like, oh well, they changed George. The artist did.
Exactly.
But then you start doing your checking on it, I went and got their books out of storage and pulled them out, and I'm like, what is happening? The books in my storage changed.
That's exactly what happened with me with the Berenstain Bears.
Yeah.
You go and find those old books, and they're not the same. Like, and how do you explain? You can't explain that to anybody without like seeming like a fucking lunatic.
Yeah, and you're flipping through the pages, and you're like, I remember him hanging from his tail from that tree limb, and now he's sitting on the tree limb. What is happening here? I read this book to my children every night. I saw that before I went to sleep. The last thing I saw was Curious George. A lot of times I fell asleep with him, but
Have you ever experienced a flip-flop of a Mandela Effect?
Not yet. Where I've heard that is now something that's occurring, where it's going back and forth.
Yeah. I've seen. I haven't seen them personally for the ones that impact me a lot. So if the Berenstain Bears, I guess, went back to being Berenstain Bears tomorrow, that's one that would like be like, whoa, what the fuck? Like,
yeah,
this is some fuckery. But I know some people say like the Febreze one. That I have seen people on Reddit before saying that it has flip flopped back and forth, and I don't know how much validity there is to it. Yeah. But I have seen people saying that it's sometimes like say tomorrow we'll go on Google, we'll Google Febreze, and it'll be spelled with 2 E's, and then maybe 5 minutes later you'll Google it again and it'll be back to 1 E.
Right.
And apparently people have had experiences with flip flops like that. I myself haven't, but I was just curious to see if maybe you had.
I haven't. I would like some of them to go back, and the reason being is it would I would feel like there was another side out there trying to correct things. If I could see more of those, I would feel like, okay, somebody's fighting this. There's and the fact that there are people experiencing it, I'm like, okay, maybe that's a sign of hope, or it's a battle and they're just going back and forth. No, we want the world to be this way, and the other party, whoever it is saying, no, we want the world to be this way. And what we're seeing is this back and forth with the timelines and the space-time continuum, and they're trying to jump us into different histories, because the way the simulation works is that every single moment that you experience, I know this sounds strange, has its own history and its own future. But you're only slicing through that one moment. So I think what they're doing is they're skipping things around. They're trying to steer the boat down the river of time into the avenues that they want that benefit them, whoever those parties are.
Yeah, of course.
And I think our aerospace is involved in it. I think top scientists are involved in it. I don't know who they're working for outside of this reality, but it possibly that they are working with entities that are saying, here's how you do it. And the entities probably have an agenda their own self, and there could be multiple community of entities that saying, no, we want this to happen this way, and no, we want it to happen this way, and they're manipulating the whole entire population and the whole entire spectrum of reality. And I don't, I'm a Scorpio, and I hate to be manipulated. I hate being manipulated. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. And when I see things like this happening, it gets me riled up, because I don't like having someone else in control, especially of my future and my past and what's going on in my life. So
Yeah. And, I think this is a good place to kind of leave off on the Mandela Effect. And I'd certainly want to have you on again and talk about some of the different avenues, and maybe talk a little bit more about the simulation and stuff like that. And but before we get out of here, I kind of want to see what you think about this. This is kind of related to the Mandela Effect. It's a thought that I have a lot, and this is just like a rambling thought I have. Do you ever think about the memories that you do have? Mm-hmm. Do you ever think like that maybe they still exist, and like they're out there somewhere being lived out live?
Yes, I mean, we're opening some doors that are going to be concepts that are very hard for our human mind to get around, to wrap around.
Of course,
because if we're in a simulation, we're dealing with we call it an artificial intelligence right now, AI, but I believe what could control a simulation of this sophistication would be something that has evolved beyond artificial intelligence and is actually now almost a living mind, if that makes sense. It's become an entity of itself. So in that case, it's going to it's going to run at the highest efficiency, and to run at the highest efficiency, you want to have everything occurring simultaneously. The illusion is the flow of time. That's the illusion. There is no time in the simulation. The illusion is created by, well, basically the movement of space-time. For instance, if I dropped you into a vat of black goo that just was endless black goo, and it was a vacuum, no sound, you had no five senses whatsoever. You had no reference point at all, but you had your fully conscious mind. Would time exist for you as you sat there? No, because you have no reference.
Probably not.
Now, if I introduce a light into the goo, and I have that light rotate around you, now every time that light comes around, you have something to gauge how long you've been in there. Time now exists, okay? Because you're watching, you have motion, and that motion can be measured, and it can be ticked, and now you have whatever that rotation is around you, is whatever you want to call it. You can call it a second, you can call it a minute, you can call it an hour. But until you have more references, it's going to be a very simplistic rendition of time, but you will experience time. Now, so that's how the simulation works, is we are experience time through the motion of the simulation. The simulation is constantly moving. The only thing that's constant in the simulation is change. It always has to be there. Change always has to occur. And in that change is the creation of time. So that's how it works.
That is some next level high ideas, blunt talk.
Yeah.
That is, I'm pretty sure we just freaked out a bunch of people with this conversation we just had.
Well,
but I fucking love it.
And that's the thing. My experience that changed me was in 2009. I have never gone public with any of this stuff. I've done some stuff on Reddit, kind of getting the feelers out there to see how people would respond. Reddit was not a good idea because you've got trolls and shills, and
Of course.
so. And then we kind of hooked up, and I said, well, maybe this is the time because of the things that are going on in our world, the Mandela Effect, escalating the way it is, and I just think that now I have enough information that I can explain things in a more simplistic way. Now, it's still going to fry your noodle, but I can at least explain it in a way that I can spoon feed people, the information a little bit so that they don't choke on it. That's my goal. I want to do it in a way that people don't crawl into a fetal position, lay on the floor, and just shake like I did. But
Yeah.
I think everybody has to go through them.
So speaking of waking people up, I know you've talked to me about this. You have a plan for a podcast. Do you want to talk about that? Plug it a little bit. Give people an idea of what your show is going to be, or do you want to save that for a later time?
I'm going to put the podcast on hold, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I'm going to write a book first.
Okay.
I've always been a writer, and I want to do the book first and try to get that out there, because I think a book would allow me to explain it in a way that people can understand it.
Are we talking a nonfiction book here, like an expose on the Mandela Effect?
No, it wouldn't be on the Mandela Effect. It would be on
the simulation.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
on the simulation. Yeah.
Okay.
And how it works, what its possible purpose is, what our possible purpose is, and where it wants to go, because everything has a purpose within the simulation. There's an end game. There's an end goal. If there is a simulation, there has to be a result that this system is looking for. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you've been a tremendous guest. I mean, I feel like every time I have a guest on, they're so great and so knowledgeable and willing to come forth with this information that they have. And I want to thank you for coming on the show, man. Hopefully
I appreciate it.
We can have some more conversations on the show and off the show as well. And we're going to keep in touch with each other. I have a mug coming for you, a ramblings of a madman mug.
Thank you.
And it should be here. I guess just got the notification yesterday that they shipped, so it should be here any day. Then I'll send it out to you. And so man, thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for rambling on with the Rambling Madman. And
I appreciate you letting me ramble on. I hope I didn't take over your show.
No, I love it. It makes it easy for me. So I really, really appreciate you coming on the show. And we're gonna keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Okay, and that about does it for episode 10 of Ramblings of a Madman. I hope you enjoyed the episode and the conversation with the speaker, and I hope you learned something today, or learned about something new that you may not have known about before, the Mandela Effect. I think it was a very good conversation, very eye-opening, very interesting, very educational in a sense. And I know he had some pretty big ideas there, and pretty interesting ideas, So I want to thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of the Ramblings of a Madman. And, don't forget to share this, like the post, comment on them. If you see my posts on Facebook, go ahead and share them so this episode reaches a broader audience. Comment, like, send it to whoever you think might be interested in listening to it. And together, we're going to keep on keeping on. Don't forget, I'm going to be taking a break next week. And maybe the week after that, just to get my ideas in order and plan out some future episodes. But after that, we'll be right back at it again every Thursday morning with a brand new, fresh episode of Ramblings of a Madman. So I want you all to keep on keeping on. Stay safe during this week or two. Remember that we are all gods out here. And have a wonderful day.